It would seem I have gone completely off-piste. So I may have just found my first composition. Ooh, that would have been bad. I undid the wrong knob. Well, good morning. Welcome to a bust photography outing. I decided to come to a trail I've never been to, and the only reason I know about this place is because there's a little cutout on the side of the road, so I decided to stop in and see what was here. And I had expected there to be a nice view of a big river with some islands in front of me. Unfortunately, for better or worse, it's all just trees, which is fine. I appreciate that this is a really nice old woodland, but it certainly changes up my plans for the morning. Also, the sun's been up for about 20 minutes now, but it's really overcast, so it's quite dark in here. That's why there's a light on my camera. And although I had hoped to get some images of the river from where I am right now, I think I'm gonna adapt, and I'm gonna wait for the sun to come up just a little bit more, hopefully shoot some nice light rays through this dense forest, and get some woodland images. It's an absolute war zone in here right now. I don't know if it's coming across on my little microphone, but it's the middle of August and these squirrels are having an absolute heyday collecting all their nuts and acorns and seeds. You just hear them banging around and crashing up in the canopy, and then they keep just dropping them on the ground. I think they're targeting my head. So I may have just found my first composition. So what caught my eye about this scene, first and foremost, is that we have a little bit of a clearing. So this is the one place that was getting hit by light right now, which is also apparent because it's the only place around here with some green fern and leaf cover. Everywhere else, like behind me, it's all just old decomposing pine needles. So this was the first kind of bright spot of color I noticed. And it also helps that there's these two, beautiful pine trees, nice and thick, lots of textures on the trunks, and a fallen tree here as well, which adds a little bit of interest to the scene as well. So what I like about the way I framed this up is the fallen log is cutting across the middle of the frame, which makes a nice leading line, but also it leaves a bit of a triangle in this section of the image. And then the nice two tall pine trees sort of in the top. And I think in post I will crop the image in vertical, probably a 4x5. After just explaining that I'm going to crop it vertically, I don't know why I don't just frame it up vertically. That seems like more work than needs to be done, so I'm going to do that now and see how it looks. I don't know why I didn't think of this before. Yeah, it's great. The composition is the same now. I've just rotated my camera and I'm shooting at 1/10 of a second at 7.1 ISO 320, just because it's still quite dark in the woods. Although this morning is not going at all as I would have expected, it's quite nice because since I now have no expectations and no plans, I've really slowed down and I'm really just wandering around and observing. And that's how I think I found my next composition. I was just looking up to see where the light was hitting, and turns out it's hitting on some nice maple leaves. Up there, where that patch of light is poking through, it's leaving some really nice colors on the leaves, and also there's some really nice contrast because some areas there's leaves on top of one another, so it's making some nice shadows. So some leaves are nice and bright green, others are darker. And what also helps is that the tree that these leaves are attached to has some really nice branches. So I'm going to try and shoot this handheld if I can get a shutter speed that's acceptable. If not, I'll whip this bad boy back out and see what kind of images I can get. I'm gonna need the tripod. But I don't really want to move too far from where I'm standing because I've already kind of lined it up handheld, but I just won't be able to get the correct shutter speed. It's, even though there's light shining through right there, it's still really dark in here. Thankfully, there's no real wind right now, so I'm not, ooh, that would have been bad. I undid the wrong knob. I'm a mess this morning. Yeah, so thankfully there's no real wind, because I am still gonna have to use a longer shutter speed to get the exposure I'm happy with. So I'm gonna take a couple exposures. I think the first one I'll take is at a 20th of a second, just to make sure I capture all the details in the leaves. And then I might be able to brighten it up a little bit in post. But I'm also going to take an exposure at a 1/5 of a second. And that's sort of like the correct exposure I want for the leaves. But I'm worried the sky might be a little bit too blown out. When I get home, we'll have a look and see which one I prefer. I could even join them together in a bit of a exposure bracketing or blending. But I prefer not to do that. I like kind of capturing the images in camera, but this is quite nice. I think it works really well. I'm fairly happy with those last two images I've captured. You know, flexing my creative muscles first thing in the morning always feels good. If I had one gripe, it's that I wish there was more interesting light poking through these trees. It's just too gray of a day, I suppose. But I'm happy with them, and I'm outside, and I'm exploring somewhere new, so it's definitely a win. And every time I take woodland images, I have more and more ideas, and if I'm gonna toot my own horn, I'd say I'm getting a little bit better at woodland images, which is great because it's something I really enjoy. But I want to try and capture one more image. I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I've captured one sort of looking at the trees. I've captured a second image looking up into the canopy. So for my nice third image, why not round it out and try and take an image downwards. It would seem I have gone completely off piste, and in order to find the trail, I'm going to try and not drop myself or my cameras down this steep hill. Stay tuned. Look at this old thing. It's on the ground. Taking image of that, I think, counts as me getting an image of the ground, or at least looking downwards. This old tree really is something else. It's really pretty. And a few things that have caught my attention is, once again, there's a clearing above us, so it has a nice light. But the nice textures in the bark. It's really deep and thick and nice colors. There's lots of greens and oranges. So that, I think, will be the first image to try and capture. I'm going to try and capture some more detailed shots. I don't think that there's enough interest around to get kind of a landscape image, but details in the bark will be my first shot. And then I also want to try and capture something to do with this area here, the contrast between the deep, old, colorful bark and then the bare tree in that patch. So I'll try and frame up a couple different compositions. So I've lined up the first composition here, focusing on the details in the bark. And the way I have it framed up, which is actually directly below this camera, there's two distinct cracks running through the center of the frame, making 3 or 4 different triangles, which I think is quite pleasing to look at. And it also has some pine needles scattered across the frame just to add some more color and texture, but I don't think there's too many. I don't think it's too distracting. And I think the oranges of the pine needles kind of work well and contrast nicely with the green moss. So here's the first image. Now moving on to my second composition. I'm going the whole distance of about 2 feet. These ones aren't turning out as nice as I would hoped. So there's this one patch right here where the bare tree meets the bark, and then just 2 feet to my left, there's another patch. So the one next to me actually looks a little bit more promising. This is the one I was just photographing, but the lines here, it doesn't quite work. But my thinking is move this way slightly, and then these jagged sections here, I think might make for a better composition. It might just look like the bark is just trying to grow back out, or the bare tree is just scraping down and consuming the tree. So I'll frame something up on this side and see how it turns out. This tree that's my subject also works incredibly well as a placeholder for my camera and tripod. Whatever, doesn't matter. Who cares about that? The image. So this one is turning out slightly better than the previous one. The way I've composed it is the bark and then the bare tree are kind of inverted. It's almost like the yin and yang symbol, how they're the same but opposite. And I think it looks quite nice. So we have the bark on the right hand side, or sorry, the left hand side of the image and on top, and then the bare tree on the bottom of the image and on the right hand side. And I'm shooting at 1/4 of a second, f7.1, ISO 160. Yeah, the settings are super simple. It took me a while to get the composition I was happy with, but I think it turned out quite nice. With that, I think I'm gonna call it for my morning of photography and this video. I'm gonna stand on my soapbox for a minute and just, you know, make sure you get outside with your camera. If things don't go as planned, so be it. Don't set your expectations too high, because oftentimes they're disappointed. But, you know, have some expectations because sometimes they're helpful. But yeah, just be adaptable. Get outside with your camera, take pictures, listen to the birds, get attacked by squirrels, you know, all the fun stuff. I hope you enjoyed some of these images. Let me know which one your favorite was. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.